Meetings between Americans and Russians regarding the agreed 20-point peace plan between the Americans and Ukrainians. This is essentially what is happening. Umerov brought and presented it to Volodymyr Zelensky the day before, and today Volodymyr Zelensky has already actively commented on it. I will outline the main points from this draft version. But regarding the meeting that Zelensky mentioned, which was supposedly supposed to take place today between Russia and the USA, Peskov announced this literally happened today during the day, that such a meeting will not take place. The news is actually not very good. And if you were hoping that everything proposed, pushed through by Kiev, and agreed upon with Washington would be immediately signed by the Russian Federation, well, if you were hoping for that, you were very much mistaken. This is the general mood conveyed by Ushakov. This is his latest comment regarding what Putin's special envoy Dmitriev brought to Moscow.
We'll discuss it here, see what can be accepted and what is absolutely unacceptable. I think that most of the proposals, of course, won't suit us because we will stick to our position, which we referred to in Anchorage and at other meetings with American representatives.
So most of the proposals are Ukrainian-European?
Well, yes, what was proposed, it seems to me, is quite unconstructive.
They haven't read it yet, friends, right? So they haven't read it, haven't studied it. Maybe they've read it, but haven't studied it, haven't delved into it, but it's already not suitable for them. Again, Anchorage is mentioned. We are sticking to what was agreed upon between Putin and Trump. Anchorage, 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 and so on and so forth. That's Ushakov. Once again, here too, we need to make a distinction. Ushakov is an aide. He is President Putin's aide, part of the presidential administration, and this is the track that is voiced through the presidential administration. It's very strange, but that's exactly how it is in the Russian Federation. Right now, it's set up so that we have commentators from the administration, representatives from the administration, and from Putin himself, that's Ushakov. Dmitriev, who travels and meets with Kushner and others, and then there are also others on our side. In the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, there's Lavrov. He always talks about the fundamental causes of the crisis, and his deputy is Ryabkov. Last week, Deputy Ryabkov, I remind you, stated that all positions with the Americans and Ukrainians are about 90% agreed upon. Everything will be fine. After Volodymyr Zelensky announced that the draft is ready, it just needs to be approved by the Russians now, and with some clarifications, it can be put into action. So today, Ryabkov comes out and clarifies not the points that have been agreed upon, but rather clarifies his statement from last week about the agreement or the plan, which is on the verge of a peaceful settlement. He explains it this way, in the original language. As for unison, I would be cautious, but there is no direct dissonance. Regarding on the verge or on the brink, of course, everything is relative. This should not be understood as an expectation of signing any package of documents. At this very moment, there is absolutely nothing, but cooperation is at the level where we were before the Trump administration came to the White House. Compared to the current moment, this is more of a step forward. So basically, that's all that's currently happening now regarding the persistent unwillingness to sign any kind of agreement. You know that President Volodymyr Zelensky recently spoke with various Ukrainian media outlets and presented them with a comprehensive 20 points of the draft peace plan, that is, the initial rough version of the proposed agreement. And right away, I want to say that some of the points have faced criticism, even among Ukrainian commentators. I won't criticize right now. You can just judge for yourselves and write your impressions in the comments. We won't read out all 20, just the main points, right? The size of the armed forces, 800,000 in peacetime. Security guarantees modeled after Article 5. Okay, right? Ukraine becomes a member of the European Union at a certain time. Now, here's the story. They promised to set 2027 as the date. But it's not set. There's no such thing. Next, from the main points, Ukraine's non-nuclear status. This is a story that's quite triggering from a political standpoint because we know the position of certain political forces. I won't name them. You all know perfectly well who say that. If there are absolutely no concrete ironclad security guarantees provided, Ukraine should have at the very least seriously considered the profound idea of potentially deploying tactical nuclear weapons on its sovereign territory, much like what is currently happening in Poland, for example. In other words, there is a comprehensive nuclear umbrella that is effectively provided by the powerful and protective NATO countries, offering a significant deterrent. For example, why isn't it written like that here? Non-nuclear status. Well, producing nuclear weapons is pure fantasy. It's clear that no one will allow this to happen in Ukraine. But deployment, where is there anything about deployment here? There isn't. Next, the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant, no compromise. Zelensky says so. So, two options. The Ukrainian option is 50-50 management. Accordingly, the United States and Kiev and the United States say together, plus the Russians as well. But the Ukrainian option involves demilitarization and the withdrawal of Russian troops from Enerhodar, including that. That's the story. So this amendment, most likely, Ushakov means that it won't pass. Now, something else interesting. Point 14, this is the most difficult point. The option of territorial concessions, one of the options. Russia withdraws from the Dnipropetrovsk, Mykolaiv, Sumy, and Kharkiv regions to Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhzhia, and Kherson. We stay where we are. This is the wording that was actually used. The Russians, on the other hand, want Ukraine to leave completely. Donbas, and here there are no changes, meaning there is no compromise either. The United States, on the other hand, is also offering its own compromise option, but this compromise is not being offered to Russia. It is being offered to Ukraine for approval. And as far as I understand, Ukraine has most likely approved it, and then all of this goes to the Russians, who reject it. Well, I'm saying this with 99.9% certainty. The United States is proposing a free economic zone, and if there is no agreement on we stay where we are, then a free economic zone can only be accepted through a referendum. And here, in this point, there are immediately two issues. Well, such huge loopholes. First of all, the referendum. We all know how it goes. The Russians don't need such a referendum, and Ukrainians, it's unlikely they would say at a referendum, take it. The second story about this point is the free economic zone. It's not clear at all what this is. A demilitarized zone, the one that was written about and proposed, that's understandable. But a free economic zone is not clear. The demilitarized zone implied the withdrawal of Russian troops and the presence there. This was a Russian proposal of the National Guard of Russia, the police. But a free economic zone, in general, this is something new, and in my opinion, it moves us a bit further away from any agreements. If we were talking about December 25th, about Christmas, right? An exchange of prisoners, all for all. Ukraine holds elections as soon as possible after signing the agreement, right? And the Kinburn spit will be demilitarized. About holding elections as soon as possible, find in the podcast section on this channel where you're watching, there's my separate analysis regarding the possibility of holding elections and how all of this is viewed, including by Volodymyr Zelensky as well as Vladimir Putin. So find that video. We won't dwell on it now. That's the story, yes. And we immediately understand that most likely what the Pope is asking for, and today the Pope is, Leo XIV called for a period of peace, a Christmas truce, and this was announced. This is from the Vatican News publication, and it was addressed not so much to the Russian Federation and Ukraine, but more in a general context. Like, let's have one day when Christians spend it entirely without wars, a world without war, well, at least the Christian world without war. But here, well, I am always surprised by this. I understand that the Vatican is far away, but the so-called Orthodox Church of the Russian Federation is, in fact, a completely artificial institution. It celebrates Christmas on January 7th. And by the way, it's not the only Orthodox Church of the Eastern Rite that celebrates Christmas then. Of the Christian Rite on January 7th. The Ukrainian Orthodox Church and the rest of the Orthodox churches that have a tomos from Constantinople, and that's all the Orthodox churches like the Romanian, Ukrainian, Serbian, whichever, celebrate on December 25th. What does Lev 14 mean when he says, let's have two Christmases? That's 2 days. Is it the 7th and the 25th, or is it just the 25th? For Russians, it's not Christmas. The main Russians, it's not Christmas. That's the story. And here there's also Orbán, who says that we are now on the brink of war. And 2025 is considered by Ukraine to be the last peaceful year for the European continent. Ukraine is also part of the European continent. As I understand it, Orbán means the European Union as a community, that in 2026, the European Union might somehow get involved in some kind of military affairs. Well, that's Orbán, right? Trying to scare his electorate. Let me remind you, he has elections in the spring and he's supposedly the party of peace. But that's not the point. Orbán is, of course, very interesting. What's more interesting is whether we'll hear a positive response to Ukraine's proposals from the Russians. My prediction is no, we won't hear it. In the form presented by Volodymyr Zelensky, it definitely won't stay that way. That's exactly why it seems to me Volodymyr Zelensky and the office of the President of Ukraine are still calling it a draft. It can certainly be changed, and indeed it will be changed. This includes the significant fact that there is a clear Ukrainian context deeply embedded within it.